Gideon, and then it will be Judges chapter 10. Good evening, and welcome to New Foundation Unity. This is our fourth in the series on the Judges of ancient Israel, which is an exploration of that foundational faculty of judgment, it's foundational because it, more than any of our other faculties, builds the conditions of our bodies. It it disrupts our peace of mind, or it can, or stabilizes our peace of mind, and it is responsible for the circumstances. We build all of that through our faculty of judgment. So, if you're having trouble viewing, Mark is on hand at truthunity.net. Email him if you can't see or can't hear. And the phone number here is 816-301-6304. If you have questions out there in cyberspace, as we go along, write them down, and then do not feel shy to call in round about 8 o'clock. All right, and as we begin our time together, I invite you to close your eyes, become still, and take that journey to the one source. Remember the truth of your being. One power, one presence, one source, one life, one mind. And our journey this lifetime is to know our oneness with that source, to bring forth the abundance of the kingdom, an abundance of all things necessary for a life of fulfillment. And for a few moments in the silence, let us acknowledge that secret place of the Most High, that source that we carry with us at all times in the silence. And as we begin to return our attention to this time and this place, we feel clearer in our connection to that source. We are more discerning as to what is truth and what is non-truth. And for an awareness of the one truth that sets us free, we are so grateful. And we do give thanks in the name and through the power of the living Christ within us all. Amen. I've been experimenting with this board vis-a-vis the camera. So I can see it on the computer, so I hope you all can see it out there, and later on you can call and tell me what you could read. But I thought it important to remind you that judges are not people. Judgment is a faculty of mind, one of 12, through which the Christ expresses, and judgment has to do most of all with our capacity to make decisions, to assess, to evaluate, and to discern. It is the power of choice which we cannot give away to anyone else or to any false god. We call them false gods because anything that is more important to us than our relationship to that source is a false god. And we have many of them. You know, a lot of times it's a person that we give power to make decisions for us. Other times it's some outer authority, or it's an internal voice that is still there from childhood, telling us, some teacher, some mother or father. And this class, I was hoping, would be an opportunity for all of us to examine the decisions that we've been making, and from what place do we make them? How do we make decisions? We say, I think somewhat glibly, although it's true, that we believe in one power and one presence. We believe in one source, but we don't always think, make decisions, and act from that place of one power. And to turn a consciousness of duality, that is, we believe in God and God's presence and God's absence. We believe in health, but we give more power to sickness. We believe in abundance, but we give no more power to the appearance of lack. And that is what the Midianites are about. Strife, inner conflict, inner pulls that are tugging at us. And there is a way, and we learn from this story how to win the battle with the Midianites. And it's a spiritual way. With the spiritual battles, there are no weapons. Okay. And so I want to remind you of the pattern. This is not something that happened in a particular period of history 3,000 years ago. This is a pattern, it's a cycle that we go through. And if we learn from going through this experience, we may repeat it, but we come through at a higher point. We grow through these challenges that are coming at us according to how we meet them, and most importantly, how we use that faculty of judgment. And we've seen it with a lot of different judges, how Deborah calls upon will, the power of will, willing to allow God to work through that faculty. We've talked last week about Gideon. That Gideon, it uses the power of renunciation, judgment linked to renunciation. That is the way you deal with Midianites. And I'm going to review Gideon before we go on to Jephthah, which is the topic for tonight, which is that faculty of judgment linked with the faculty of love. Love meaning that power of the mind that unifies. It has nothing to do with hugging and like that, but it has to do with that unifying power of the mind. And Jephthah is a really good example of that. And so let's review this, because this is what we go through. Apostasy, this starts the cycle. This is when we find ourselves in a challenge because we have been paying reverence to the presence of God and the absence of God. And so it's an invitation to look and see how much power you give to sickness as a reality and how much you give to the amazing capacity of the system to heal. How much power do you give to the truth that there's an infinite source of all things necessary for a happy and fulfilling life? And it's the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom, and we see only a tiny bit or think we can only have a tiny bit. And so on. So look at how you view that one source and ask, how much in alignment are you? I know I fall up short. And so as a result of having done that, then in the Bible stories, the Lord God, that is the Christ within us, it's not that the Christ causes the oppression, but the fact of having gone out of alignment with that one source is what brings the oppression. And so they are sold into the hands of these other gods, all right, whatever they may be. The chief god of Canaan was Baal, the agricultural god, the god of fertility. This is not some evil character. They had crops, and they needed rain, and they had these sexual rites in their temples and all, and it was offensive to the Israelites, not so much for that it was about fertility, but because there is one source that takes care of all difficulties. And remember, there is no situation, no condition, absolutely no condition, which is more powerful than the power and presence of God within us that we have to overcome it. It's easy to forget that in the middle of it. So that's step 2. We suffer when we get off track from the one source. And then we cry out to the Lord, all right? Why me? Why is this happening to me? We may not cry to the Lord like the Israelites did, but we do have that kind of feeling of, oh, here we go again, or what did I do this time? Or, and a lot of people think, am I being punished by God? A lot of people really believe that God is punishing them, and have to remember that the law it's impersonal. It has nothing against you. The law of gravity works whether you are in tune with it or not. And the law, and when I say law, I'm talking about the law of cause and effect, the law of as in mind, so in manifestation, which we call the law of mind action in unity, that we set this cycle in motion through the beliefs that we hold and the energy that supports it. That's what brings this about. And then we have to take a step back and look at, where the misstep has been. And it's always that we have put something, some personal relationship, some relationship to an authority, ahead of the power and presence within us, which is the only power. And then a judge comes forth. Now, a judge, as I said, that faculty of judgment comes forth because we need to discern. We need to make a different decision. And no one faculty acts alone. If we make unwise decisions, that is, decisions that are decisions that do not serve the truth that we know, then, and if we're sharpening our faculty of discernment, we say, well, gee, I don't know if I'm really ready to give up that belief. Here's where Gideon was. It starts out in right away in chapter 6, saying that, and I did not emphasize this last week, but I want to, that here Gideon is at this stage and he's praying. He has this vision and he's praying, and he has this inner dialogue with the Lord of his being, and he is trying to sort the chaff from the wheat, that is, the truth from the error, in a wine press. Wine press means Gethsemane. All right, Gethsemane. You remember what happened in Gethsemane, right? That was like a crisis of faith where Jesus was right up against something he knew was coming, and his human voice said, "Take this cup from me, if you can. But if this be thy will, let my will be thy will." But Gethsemane means wine press because what it does, oil press as well, because it squeezes the essence out of that, the essence of good out of that. And it's agonizing. Gethsemane, you think of Gethsemane, and it's a time of intense. It's the dark night of the soul. Where's my faith? My faith is sleeping, all right? Where are my faculties? Jesus asked the disciples to wait for him while he prayed. And so it's like temporarily we feel abandoned by the very channels of expression that we count on. So sometimes we go through this, our own personal Gethsemane, where we realize that we have to give up some cherished belief, something that has always given us security, and we don't want to do it. Some friendship that no longer serves, something that we have always counted on, something you've always depended upon, and if it doesn't match up to the truth, it has to be given up. And that's the lesson of Gideon. He represents the power of judgment with renunciation. So here's Gideon. He gets his answers. He says, why is this happening to us? If the Lord is with me, why am I going through this? Why is this oppression upon me? And the Christ, the Lord of his being, says, I warned you. I warned you not to worship the God of the Amorites. Okay, the Amorites represents public opinion, popular opinion. How many times do we make decisions based on popular opinion? Well, everybody does this. Doesn't everybody catch cold when they walk in the cold water? There's all kinds of beliefs out there that we hold on to that have no truth to them whatsoever. Many people, we've been talking, many people give power to these things we call disease and actually believe that there is some disease that God can't heal or some situation that cannot be resolved without our getting off the track, without our effort. We need to help things along, so to speak. Okay, so here's Gideon. So he's being told why, and he says, hey, the Lord is with you. Just take that and go and deliver Israel from the Midianites. And Gideon says, but how can I do this? I'm too small. My clan is weak. It is not our job to ask how. All right. God is with him, and this is a tough job, but we do not ask how. We turn the how over to infinite intelligence, which can arrange the things that we need to arrange. Because we look at our own situation, we say, well, I couldn't possibly do that. I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm not smart enough, all the excuses that we have for why we can't do it. Oh, my parents wouldn't approve, my friends wouldn't approve, people would laugh at me. We have all kinds of reasons to avoid making that change, of letting go of something that has always given us security. So then after the judge comes, and then they get delivered, all right, it's really fun to look at the strategy of how Gideon delivers Israel. So then there's a verse that says, then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. All right, so that's when he finally said, okay, I'm going to do this. And so he tore down the altar to Baal at night and built an altar to the Lord. This is an important thing. This is like putting your stake in the ground. This is what I stand for. And please, Lord, you tell me when I'm off track. Okay, if you say you stand for freedom, you're going to be challenged in all the places where you are not a living expression of freedom. So if you say you are for one power and one presence, and that's your belief, and you've planted your stick in the ground, built your altar, then you're going to be challenged in all the places where you don't live up to that. And that's good, because that's how we cleanse through the power of denial. Now, what the power of denial means in this story, what does Gideon do? He sends out messengers to everywhere. He calls on all of his faculties. And the Lord says, too many. You see, in the physical world, more is better. Bigger is better. But in the spiritual realm, you only need one. So there's all these ways that he's told how to reduce the number of men that have gathered, responded to the call. Right? 22,000 right off the bat are sent home because they admitted to being fearful. It's a fearful job, this Midianites. If you've ever had the thought, I wonder why I ever started on this path, because I think it's a little hard. I think I was happier before. All right. So they were sent home, 22,000. Please note the number of zeros plus the 2. All right, you need to understand that. Then the next test, and I am grateful for an insight from one of our callers last week, because it's been a while since I've had a dog. And so the next test is that Gideon is to take the remaining 10,000 down to the river. And he is to see which ones lap the water like a dog, and those go in one group, and then the others kneel down at the side and use their hands as a cup and drink the water. And just one thing, and it just flashed on me, because when she called and she said, dogs go completely into the water. They don't stand by the side and drink water. Dogs go in the water and just drink it, because we need to thoroughly cleanse. Water stands for cleansing here in this story, and we have to make a total denial. So what was left after all the ones that had been weeded out were 300, meaning all three levels of our being had to be cleansed, because after all, they'd been struggling with these Midianites for 7 years, 7, the number of manifestation in physicality. So that spiritual duality had manifested, had expressed through the duality in consciousness, which had then manifested in physicality. That's when it becomes something concrete, like sickness or poverty or something like that. And so here was the strategy. It was so perfect. And you think, this is an odd way to fight a battle. So Gideon has to, again, pass the test. He has to really sort carefully. And he's guided to go down and sort of scope out the situation in the camp of the Midianites. And he hears one of them describing a dream of how the Midianites have already been delivered into the hands of Israel. So he feels confident now, and he goes back and he takes 100 men and puts them in 3 different spots up on the hill, surrounding the camp of the Midianites. 100. God's presence, spirit, one power, one presence. One power, one presence in your thinking and feeling. One power, one presence in the way that you act. He's got the bases covered. And what do they use? In the left hand is a torch. Light. All right, light. And in the right hand is a trumpet. And they have a glass jar. The torch is covered by this glass jar. And when they strike, and they strike in the middle of the third watch, and I'm not quite sure what that is time-wise, but it's anyway where they're not being expected to attack. And at the sign, they break the glass, and their torches are, spreading light very quickly, and they blow their trumpets and yell, and the Midianites are scared and they run away. With a situation like this, what we do is we have to shed more light. We have to go to a deeper level, to the source of light within us. And once we infuse more light into whatever situation, we are facing those illusions of power simply disappear. It's like that's denial. And it is built in to your practice of silence, because the practice of silence has 2 phases where you infuse new energy into your system, and then you release those things that are not in sync with that new light. So it's about shedding light on that situation, which always dissipates that sense of 2 powers or something more powerful than that. And the trumpet, of course, sounding, it's a grand announcement. Trumpets were used as a form of denial to say, King is coming, or the power of the word. All right. And so the denial is simply shine light. You take your attention off of the problem and allow the light to come through. And that's basically the story of Gideon. So they all flee, and then there's more to the story, but the important part is that they all flee, and then all these men that have responded to the call, they surround them, and so the Midianites are defeated. And then there are two princes. Of course, there would be two princes of the Midianites. This is the duality. And one of them is named, well, let me see, what are their names? Oreb and Zeb. Oreb and Zeb. Oreb means like aggressive, rapacious thoughts. These are the kind of the low-level thoughts of violence and revenge. And then the other one, Zeb, represents wisdom that has been tainted by this self-serving desire. So they, like the story in Deborah, these guys get their heads chopped off, but that's not what it means. It just means that the ego that governs through the intellect is no longer in charge. So there's not God and something else. There is only God. And so, and usually the judge is invited, as Gideon was, to be the leader of Israel, and he turns down the ephod, which is the breastplate of the priest, which gives you the yes or no answers that the priest got. So that's the story of Gideon. And it says at the end of the story, and there was peace for 40 years. All right, there was peace. And that's what happens. So you go through a stage of growth, and then there is peace.
For as long as it takes.
For
the foundation.
So a foundation is there, but then that doesn't mean that the challenges are gone. It just means you have a stronger foundation to meet the next one, if you have learned something from it, if you've grown from it. Okay, so I took a while for that on purpose, because now the next one is so different. It's not different, but it's different. So you remember the cycle, and I'm going to hopefully okay. So what I've done is I've made a comparison between Gideon in terms of what faculties they work with, in terms of what the enemy is, okay, in terms of the strategy that they use, and that the end result is peace. Okay, so here's the story of Jephthah. Jephthah, his name means, his name means the, opening the way to freedom, whom Jehovah frees. And here's the situation that Jephthah is in. He is the son of a harlot. His father is Gilead. Gilead's the name of his father, which means, well, I'll tell you what Gilead means in just a minute, but it's an important piece. And he has a bunch of brothers that were sons of Gilead's wife. So he's the illegitimate son. And as I mentioned, these Ammonites, this is popular opinion. You know, there's a lot of popular ideas out there that have not an iota of truth in them. But here again, faculty of discernment. This is the faculty of love. So anyway, the brothers, they say, we don't want you to inherit. You're not our real brothers, so we're sending you away. You know, you're not worthy to inherit our father's inheritance. And so he goes to the land of Tob. The land of Tob is means metaphysically the place of goodness, of joy, of everything. Why worthless men collected around him, that part is not clear, but the land of Tob, it's like the description of the kingdom. And so he also has a little bit of difficulty with the Ephraimites, with the faculty of will, because will can either be willful, if it's looking outwardly, or it could be willing when it's looking to the source. All right, it can be either. And love can either be attachment or dependence, or it can be unification with the source. All right. All right, now here's the story. We start out, this is in chapter 10, verse 6. And guess what? And the people of Israel again did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, and served the Baals and the Ashtaroth. Ashtaroth is the consort of Baal. The gods of Syria, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of the Ammonites, and the gods of the Philistines, and they forsook the Lord. So they had a lot of them. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. Is this a familiar refrain by now? And he sold them into the hand of the Philistines, and into the hand of the Ammonites. And they crushed and oppressed the children of Israel that year for 18 years. Okay, and everyone, I'm sure, is becoming more aware of numbers and what they mean. 18 years they oppressed all the people of Israel that were beyond the Jordan in the land of the Amorites, which is in Gilead. Okay, now the land which is across the Jordan, that's on the east side of the Jordan. And east signifies the within. It's interesting because the land of milk and honey, which is Canaan, the promised land, is lowland. And so what makes it the land of milk and honey is the consciousness that has to lift it up. It's interesting. So anyway, Gilead. I want to talk about Gilead for a moment, because Gilead, it is a real geographical place, but here it is more than that. It is, by definition, the mound of witness. That's that place, that high place in consciousness where you are like an observer. You are a witness to what is going on around you. It plays an important part in the essential oil history because they discovered the balm of Gilead, which is believed to be the gold that was brought to Jesus at his birth. They found a 3,000-year-old distillery in En-Gedi, which is in Gilead, which distilled balsam fir. Balsam fir is called liquid gold. And so it would make sense that if frankincense and myrrh were gold, that balsam fir would represent the gold of the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Anyway, I thought, because what the oils do is they serve to lift that awareness to where you are the witness of all around you. You're like the all-seeing discernment of everything around you. So that's what Gilead is. And so these Ammonites, they wanted all of this. They wanted the whole eastern side of the Jordan. Okay, now this is like, if you ever feel like you're being oppressed by all the popular ideas that are going around, and that your parents have these ideas for you and other people have these ideas, and you're being pulled this way and that's the Ammonites. And the Ephraimites are just simply willful. So here's Jephthah, and the people of Israel cried to the Lord, saying, now this is interesting, we have sinned against thee, because we have forsaken our God and have served the Baals. And the Lord said to the people of Israel, now listen to what God says. I love this part. Did I not deliver you from the Egyptians and from the Amorites, from the Ammonites and from the Philistines? The Sidonians and the Amalekites and the Midianites oppressed you, and you cried to me, and I delivered you. I always, when you call to me, well, I'm done. Okay, I'm not doing this anymore. That's what God says. Therefore, I will deliver you no more. That's the point at which you say, this journey is hopeless. I'm not getting anywhere. And they said, oh, please, just one more time. We're really going to serve you. We're really going to do it this time. And so they built an altar to the Lord, and suddenly the Lord is indignant at all the oppression that they've been suffering at the hands of the Ammonites. It's an interesting take. They even know that they've been serving two powers in presence, and that the Lord has delivered them time after time after time. We know that too, that God is the answer to the difficulties. And just at their point of desperate, they say, yeah, but I know this time, I promise, I'll make a deal, God. Just do this one time. Well, okay, so they get a reprieve, and God's on their side once again. And so they say, but who can we get to fight this? They sent away their finest warrior. So they go over and they ask Jephthah, and he says, you hate me, you sent me away, you deny me my inheritance, and now you call me when you're in trouble. I mean, that's...
And they say, yeah.
And so, yeah, but we need you to lead us against these Ammonites. And so he makes a deal. And he said, okay, if I come and I fight with you and I deliver Israel from these Ammonites, then I want you to put me in charge. I am the leader. In other words, I make the decisions, okay? Because I am working with the one power and one presence, and I have a firm foundation in faith. Well, okay. They say okay. They agree to that. And so he leads them into battle. Then there is this long passage starting with verse 12, and it describes, he confronts the Ammonites and says, what is it you want from us? What is it? And they said, well, you took our land. And then Jephthah goes through, and if you want to, You can look up all the names of all these places. But what is being said here? Jephthah says, when we came up from Egypt, we asked passage from all of you, from these Moabites, from all these various tribes, and you denied us passage. And so we had to come kind of this circuitous way, and the Lord helped us out. And so the lands that you feel dispossessed of were given to us by God. All right. So they have a battle. And Jephthah says, any land that your God gives to you is yours, but this is ours. There's a lot that could be said about this in terms of how that has played out in history. But metaphysically, it's like all the consciousness, all the land, this is from Abraham, all the land that you can perceive as being you is yours. Okay. All that you can envision. And then, who is it who takes it a step further and says, all the land that I possess, you have to possess the land. You can't just see it. You have to actually possess it. You have to own that state of consciousness. Okay, and that would be the faculty of love, knowing your oneness with that land of Gilead, or the land of milk and honey, whatever it is. Okay. There's a long description here of all the times they met up with these different tribes and tried to find a passage through them. Don't we try to find passages through these ways that we know aren't going to lead any place? We try to find our way through various ways that our human thinking says might work, but it doesn't. And so they end up, and yet, here he is, the leader of the Gileadites, all those in this high place that know their oneness with all good and the source. And he's quite upfront. There's no, he doesn't hide behind any rhetoric. He just says, look, this is what you want. You're not going to get it. This is ours. Okay, so then he prays to the Lord God of Israel and says, if you deliver these Ammonites into my hand, I will sacrifice the first person that comes from my door to greet me. Okay, and so of course he wins the battle. And he does not do anything. All he does is say, it's ours. There's nothing going on. He's a mighty warrior. He's a spiritual warrior. And so as it turns out, as you probably know, the first person who comes from his door, remember where the door is. Jesus said, I am the door. Okay, that comes from that silent place within. It was his daughter. Okay, a daughter. Now, it doesn't mean that he killed his daughter. All right, it does not. And I'll tell you what metaphysically it means. That daughter, he had no other children. And she asked for 2 months to mourn her virginity. You see, she represents his only relationship to the world, his only connection to the world. And so what he's saying, he tells her, I made this vow, and I cannot break this vow. It's like saying, I cannot break my word to myself. We do that all the time. We say, well, tomorrow I'm going to go on this diet, and oh, whoops, maybe I'll start the next day. And so he says, I cannot. And she says, no, if you spoke that to the Lord, just give me 2 months and then fulfill your vow. So he fulfills his vow. It does not say that he killed her. I think what it means is he cut off his relationship to the world and he offered her to the temple. That's what happened to, it's what happened to Mary. It's what happened to, who else was offered to the temple? Samuel and Samson? No, Samuel. Yeah, and so a lot of times a virgin, you're offering your virgin consciousness. That's that finest part of yourself that gives birth to the Christ, and you offer that to the Christ as your offering. So he sacrifices human love for his daughter, for this love of being a servant of the Lord. Anyway, I'm definitely open to other takes on that, and it's usually tomorrow. That tomorrow I'll have some more inspiration on this. And so he is made the leader. He fulfills his vow, and he is made the leader. And once again, there is peace for 40 years. I'm going to give all of you a question, a chance first to talk, because it's close to 8 o'clock, and so we have 6 minutes or so. So if any of you have questions, and I know you've read it, right? You've read the story. And so if anything I have said needs clarifying, or if you want to make a comment on any aspect of the story, please do so.
What comes to me is the comparison to Abraham sacrificing his son.
Exactly.
But this is a daughter.
This is the daughter. Yes. You see, that was in the time when if you didn't have a son, you didn't have a way to pass on the paternal line. But Jephthah represents, he's working with the faculty of love. And remember that Isaac represented his joy. Isaac means joy. And she is nameless. There is not a name that I could find there for her. And it means, offering up that pure consciousness. Isn't that what we do when we go into the silence? We are going in and offering ourselves. Our human consciousness gets merged with the silence, the pure consciousness. And isn't that our way of sacrificing to the Lord? As I say, I'm open to anything.
He's also, and I think what I like, and I think he said it last week, is the sacrifice, and we think of sacrifices as destroying, but it's giving, and he's sacrificing the feeling nature.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
He's sacrificing the feeling nature. Because on a human level, love is about feeling and emotion, right? But even that fine feeling level, that's not the absolute, that union with the source. Yeah, a very interesting story. But if you think in terms of that he actually killed his daughter and offered it as a burnt offering, I would say as a purified offering. She wandered for a couple of months, mourning the fact that she was going to be given, I think, to the temple, that she wasn't going to be able to marry, she was not going to be able to have children.
And his daughter, his relationship with what did you say was his mother?
I said
that's a harlot, or
his mother.
His mother.
Yeah, and so she was not considered pure, all right? So at least by popular opinion, that somehow he was of less value, even though he was the one who delivered the Israelites. But remember, this is not people we're talking about. This is about a faculty that has been purified to the point where it knows its source. So always righteous judgment comes from the source. What's righteous judgment? It's judgment that comes from guidance directly from the source. There's no, needing a sign. I think I need a sign. Let's put the fleece out and let's cast. No, it's this is the purest kind of judge that we can have. Now, after Jephthah gets done with the Ammonites, the Ephraimites, which in this case represent the willful thoughts. Ephraim was the second son of Joseph, and he represents the will, the faculty of will. And so will and understanding, those are two brothers that are related closely in consciousness. If you have the understanding, then you are willing to allow the power and presence to work through you. Without that, you want your way selfishly. And so the Ephraimites now complain to him. He's already had this discussion with them. And now they're saying, well, how come you left us out? We wanted to fight the Ammonites too, and you didn't give us a chance. And so he takes care of them in short order. You don't see anything that he actually does, but it says he conquers them. They want to come over. See, they're trying to get over into Gilead. They're really from Ephraim, and they speak a different dialogue. So he devises a way to keep them from coming over. And it has to do with a dialect. And so he asks them where they are from. And if they pronounce the S, let's see, I'll just read it. That's easier.
Where are you?
I'm on chapter 12. Okay. The men of Ephraim were called to arms, and they crossed to Zaphon and said to Jephthah, "Why did you cross over to fight against the Ammonites and did not call us to go with you? We will burn your house over you with fire." Okay, burn your house. Yes, purification, exactly. And Jephthah said to them, "I and my people had a great feud with the Ammonites, and when I called you, you did not deliver me from their hand. And when I saw that you would not deliver me, I took my life in my hand and crossed over against the Ammonites, and the Lord gave them into my hand. Why then have you come up to me this day to fight against me?" Then Jephthah gathered all the men of Gilead. All right, remember, this is high consciousness, witnessing, and fought with Ephraim. And the men of Gilead smote Ephraim because they said, "You are fugitives of Ephraim, you Gileadites, in the midst of Ephraim and Manasseh." All right, you're not really from Gilead. You're really from these other places. And he said, "No." They said to him, then say, he would ask them, "Are you an Ephraimite?" When the man would say no, they said to him, then say, Shibboleth. And he said, Sibboleth, for he could not pronounce it right. Then they seized him and slew him at the fords of the Jordan. Okay. Crossing the Jordan means crossing over that continual stream of thought, the stream of thought, all the thoughts, conscious, subconscious, everything. He can't cross over because he can't pronounce the name right. Okay, he can't speak the word. And there fell at that time 42,000 of the Ephraimites. All right.
I don't get 42.
42,000. Well, it's 2 more than 40. 40 is what it takes. 2, that's duality. So here we are back again in a dual consciousness. Jephthah judged Israel 6 years. Then Jephthah the Gilead died and was buried in the city of Gilead. And then there were a couple more judges, a few more judges, and then there was peace. And again, in chapter 13, the people did evil in the sight of the Lord. And we have the story of Samson. Now, Samson, this is a famous story. I'm sure that all of you out there, if you know, even went to Sunday school once, you know the story of Samson. But it is the story of the faculty of judgment, and he made some pretty bad judgments, unwise judgments with regard to Delilah, who was Philistine. And he was a Nazirite. He also had been offered to the temple, which meant that he couldn't take strong drink or cut his hair. And so this represents the faculty of judgment when it's linked with the faculty of strength. We think of strength, and he was very strong physically, but inner strength, it's that power of the mind to persevere, to accomplish. It supports faith. So to persevere, to keep on, keeping on. He held out pretty long with Delilah about the hair thing. They wanted to find out his source of strength, but his hair, the source of her strength? I don't think so. I think it's again another one of those false gods. But in any case, that's what's on tap for next week. So we can always summarize by looking at the meaning of the names. The meaning of the names gives us a flavor of that particular faculty of judgment when it is linked with another faculty, or more than one. And then we look at and it's always according to what the challenge is. And there is only one way to get rid of those Midianites, and that is to transcend it and bring more light into it and allow the light to dissolve the illusion. And with Ephraim, it's like simply living there, knowing you are at the source, and just saying, you've got to go. That's that way of dealing with it. But the strategy is non-violent, with the glass jars and the trumpets. And, what kind of weapons? What if you told a general that he had to fight this fearsome army and he could only have 300 men and trumpets and light and glass? But metaphysically, it makes perfect sense that so many things we have as worldly wisdom is the exact opposite of spiritual truth, namely that more is better. All right? Whereas the truth is, there's only one. Better to capture the fort, better, and own the territory. Another opposite, if you will, that in the relative world, there's this philosophy that get as much as you can by giving as little as possible. That's very common. Whereas the truth of the matter is that you can only receive to the degree that you are willing to give. All right. Another one that this is culture worldwide in America, that if you try hard, you will succeed. I forgot to shut off the phone. You don't answer it because it's probably a telemarketer. Excuse me.
You need to give the number.
I will. Yes, thank you. Okay, what was I saying?
The phone interrupted.
Yeah, the phone interrupted my train of thought. And so, but notice that the strategies are non-violent strategies. All you need to do is acknowledge the source, and you call your disciple when you recognize it as a power through which that Christ of your being gets expressed. It's never just the faculty of judgment. It's always two or three gathered in the name of the Christ. Okay. And then the result is the same. We always, oh God, I don't know if I can get through this one. This is a challenge. And they tend to get steeper. But it's always to push you deeper, to draw on, because as you go within, there is more unity as you get closer to the source. And so we have infinite resources to draw upon to meet these ordinary challenges of everyday life. And so the judges, it's always the same result. God is always present to deliver us when we turn and ask. And anyway, I'm going to open up for all of you out there. Please do not be shy. Telephone number 816-301-6304. And so, ask away. And Bob, you can call if you want. Here's the phone. Because I just keep talking until, unless somebody wants to ask something, because that's the comparison I wanted to make. And I always, as I say, tomorrow, I want to start working on next week right away, because I'll have more insights about Jephthah than when I looked at it, for this past week. And then we go to Samson, and it's like Samson. The Philistines kind of won that battle, but we learn from what appears to be a defeat, and sometimes we learn more from the defeat. In the end, he actually pulled down the temple of the Philistines through his strength. He realized his what he had done.
And Delilah was a Philistine.
Delilah was a Philistine. Yes, and she was very attractive to him, and she was a kind of a double agent. So he was married to Delilah, and she was supposed to find out the source of his power, because he had amazing power. And so he would make up stories, and he would say, it's that when I do this, that gives me power. And so they would try these things, and of course they wouldn't work. And so finally he confessed to her. It's kind of, if you love me, you'll give me your secret. Oh. She seduced him. Absolutely. And we get seduced by relative life all the time. The Philistines represent everything worldly. Yeah, Delilah we are seduced by relative experience. The thrills. It's wonderful to use our faculties to enjoy the beauties of the relative. But if they become more important to you than the power and presence that is responsible for your capacity to appreciate, then that's a false god too. Anything can be a false god. This can be a false god. Your church can be a false god. Your people make ministers false gods all the time. The ones who function from a level of personality. Because the power is not in the priest, the power is in the direct connection. Jesus said, go direct. Go direct. They said, no, you can't, you have to go through priests. And Jesus said, no, go direct. Abba, I'll show you. Abba, Father. And I know you always hear me, but I'm doing this so that the people will really believe that I am an instrument here. And then Jesus said we could do the same and more, greater. He felt that because there's more of us, we have the capacity to generate more of that energy in a group. That was Charles Fillmore's idea of the Church of Christ, was that with people with a shared vision, sit in the silence at the same time, same time around the world, actually in their day, but in the same place, in the same time. It generates these waves that go all around the world, and it's a real phenomenon. But can't make a false god. You can't commercialize it. You just have to participate in the truth. Let's see. Okay, we have 15 more minutes. How would you like to spend it? I've pretty much told you all that I know about Gideon and Jephthah. And you can compare it. You can make your own little chart and see where you make decisions as Deborah, who defeated the Canaanites, but she called on Barak, and perfect combination to have will. He represents the executive power that was willing to serve that intuition, that very fine, discriminating sense of what to do. Her guidance was, do this, do that, go at this time, go at this place, at this season, do this, done. And the Canaanites were done in. And even, it's like doing these challenges. In that story about Deborah, everybody, even the woman whose name was Jael, who killed Sisera, she put a tent peg through his temples. Even by that small sense of loyalty to a higher power, earned her the victory. She's praised in the Song of Deborah for doing in the general of the Canaanite army. It's pretty amazing. Okay.
So when we cover all these, we're going to be, they're about judgment because we're doing the judges, right?
Yes.
And they're about discerning. And so there are other faculties connected.
Yes.
Like next week is strength. And I guess I think I'm looking at the comparison between the two strategies of Gideon and Jephthah. And with Gideon, he tears down the altar of Baal and then builds and replaces it. And so where would be the tearing down and replacement here? Changing the ways? Would you say?
Well, Jephthah's working with a different faculty,
Oh,
so
yeah, okay.
so it
It's
has,
like a club, yeah.
and his way is to unify with the power of absolute good and just the confrontation, as I'm seeing it today. Now, I may change my mind tomorrow, but it's like all he does is he says, "Why are you doing this?" And they give their answer, and he refutes it, and then they're and that's pretty much all there is to it. He's saying, what he's saying is, nobody can dispossess you of your land. Land is consciousness, the whole energy. No one can take that away from you. But we think we try in our relative ways. We invade countries all the time and have bloody, gory wars in which many, many people are killed and it costs us a whole lot. But not this way of fighting a war. So, but no, Gideon, his name means, denial. So what, means tree feller, cutter off, destroyer. But Jephthah means whom Jehovah frees. Whom Jehovah opens the door to freedom. And when we can, even when it means sacrificing our own feeling nature to God, that we value our own relationship to God more than any human relationship, it has to take precedence over everything. Because where are you if you have lost your integrity? That's the importance of making a covenant. You won't break it because you're making it with that deepest part of yourself. I'm sure there is more to say about Jephthah, and I will look into Jephthah more. In fact, I'll read you a couple of quotes. 816-301-6304. This is your last chance. Jephthah, whom Jehovah sets free. This is from the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. And metaphysically, it means persistent spiritual judgment, righteous judgment. Okay? The open way to freedom, spiritual judgment used with persistence, which opens the way to spiritual freedom, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Okay, Jephthah's only daughter, as we've talked about, it's human love between him and his daughter. It's his only child, and but metaphysically, it's all that he is in relation to the world. Okay, Ephraimites. These are the ones who, in the end, they want credit and they wanted to participate in the conquering of the Ammonites. Because their name means fruitful. The executive power is the power that brings forth the good. You are willing to let God bring forth. However, in this particular phase of it, the will is wanting things of the world here. Wants credit, wants to be included in the victory, and now wants to come over to Gilead because they really want all of Gilead. But they can't speak it correctly. They can't speak that language of truth. So that keeps them out. And Gilead, as I told you, it means Mount of Witness, enduring rock, and it's in the territory that belongs to Benjamin, which represents faith. So faith and love working together with judgment here. Here's what Charles Fillmore has to say. That Ammonites represent in addition to popular opinion, it's kind of the wild, uncultivated thoughts and ignorance that have formed the outer world. It's the careless, disorderly thinking. And, when people have, kind of a chaotic inner life and have a hard time making decisions and have difficulty in making wise decisions, but always seem to be trouble prone, don't have their priorities straight, something like that. So that's what Jephthah was up against. His brothers, okay, that you can inherit, well, so what? You can inherit the worldly stuff, but you've inherited the kingdom, right? The other thing is, Gilead also means literally enduring rock. Rock, upon this rock I build my faith. As Jesus said, upon this rock I build my church, which is faith in the power and presence.
Rock of Ages.
Pardon?
Rock of Ages.
Rock of Ages, yes, quite right. And so that's a little bit more. That's where I got the information. And here's a map, and I haven't been able to get a good, crisp map here. But here's Jephthah over here on the east side. And here are the Ephraim people over here on the west side. And so they're trying to come across the river into Gilead. Here's Gilead, here's Manasseh. These two are pretty close together, and they want to go into Gilead, but when they cross over, they have to they have to speak the word of truth.
They have to make a change.
They have to make a change, which is, as a species, we don't like to do, particularly when it means losing something that has always made us feel secure. Losing a friend. That's, one that you could always count on, and a friend is no longer there. In the same way, relationships change. Your circumstances change, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing. We don't want to hang on to, it's like going to college and wanting to hang on to your fourth grade books, or something like that. Okay, so comments, questions? Everybody's so quiet today. It's because I yacked so much.
No, we cover everything.
Yes. You leave no questions.
No stone left.
All right, and so let's just close by closing our eyes for a moment and settling down into the silence, that mound of witness, that enduring rock, in the silence for just a few more moments. And we give thanks for the wisdom that comes from that one source that allows us to make wise decisions, to meet the challenges in a way that supports our highest good. And for that, we say thank you, God. Amen. And for those of you at home, if you would like to support the New Foundation, you have a chance to make a donation online, or of course you can write to me at newfoundationunity.org. You can send a check to the post office box that is on the website. And so, I'll see you again next week. God bless you all, and read up on Samson, and we'll continue this exploration next week. Good night.